Okay, I show myself, Maria Kelly, Chelsea Favero. Robert, I believe this is you as co-host. Bob Robertson.
Hello.
Hi. Joan Rice.
Here, thanks.
Patricia McNeese.
Here.
Tatiana Childress.
Here.
Angela Ryan.
Here.
Bull Pinellas. Barry Westmark.
Here.
Brent Hall.
Here.
Joseph Camara. Caroline Lanford.
I'm here.
Madison Moyer. What? Who are you with?
City of St. Pete.
Thank you, Madison. Appreciate that. Brett Hall. Did I already call you?
Yeah, you did.
Cheryl Stacks. Derek Reeves. Gina Harvey. Kyle Simpson. Renee Vincent.
I'm here.
Here.
Russell Ferlita.
I'm here.
And I have a call in. Can you identify yourself, please? Call in. Can you identify yourself, please? Call in. Go ahead.
This is Rhonda Bowman. I just joined without video. I'm not sure if you were referring to me.
I believe so. Okay, so
Okay.
Rhonda, last name, please.
Rhonda Bowman, Pinellas County Public Works.
Thank you, Rhonda. All set. Chelsea.
Sorry, I have too many mute buttons all over the place. My apologies. So we're hosting this webinar because we wanted to walk through the different grant programs that Forward Pinellas has available to all of our local and regional partners. We do have the Complete Streets program, the Transportation Alternatives, and the Multimodal Priorities program, which is a new one. So we wanted to host this webinar to walk through each of those programs for you and be able to answer any questions that you may have on the various grant programs. So one thing we really wanted to remind you all of to start out with is the role of Forward Pinellas. And really our main role is to align the funding that we receive for transportation projects to really support the land use vision that's laid out in the countywide plan and through the Advantage Pinellas plan, which is our long range transportation plan. And each year we develop a list of priorities and we submit those priorities to the state for consideration as they develop the 5-year work program. So really the projects that we're looking at are going to be those that can receive state and federal funding in order to advance. And once we have the priority list, we then work with the Florida Department of Transportation to advance the projects that we have. I will say that through these grant programs, we are not looking to replace any existing priority. Our multimodal list right now has already about 25 projects on it. We are not going to be reordering any of those projects. None of them are going away. This is just for new projects to add to the list and to be also considered for funding moving forward. We do have a brief timeline here, and we're going to walk through this a little bit more with each grant program that we have. We do have a phased deadline approach for each of the programs. We received the feedback last year that we had one due date for every grant program that we had, and the feedback that we got was that it was a bit too cumbersome for everyone to pull together everything at the same time. So you'll see that we have in September, the applications for TA projects are going to be due. In October, the applications for the Complete Streets. And then in December, the applications will be due for the multimodal programs. For each of there is no formal application structure. What we are going to recommend that you do is go through the individual criteria for the grant program that you're going to be submitting for, and try to follow that criteria and answer each one of the criteria points as you put together an application. You don't get extra points for amazing graphics or some kind of professional look to the application. Really, these are going to be judged on the content of the application that you put together. And those that do have competitive scoring criteria, it's strictly based on that criteria and the scoring. Again, no extra points for flashiness. If you have any questions as you move forward in developing your application, we ask that you please reach out to us, and we're here throughout the entire application period to offer any kind of technical support. If there's some data that you don't think you have access to, call us. It might be something that we have and that we could provide to you. Our staff is here throughout the entire process to answer any questions that you have. So with that, I'm going to ask Angela Ryan, she's our principal planner, to talk with you about the Complete Streets application process. So Angela.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chelsea. I'm really excited to talk about Complete Streets today. I have a short presentation with a quick overview for anyone that's new to Complete Streets, and then some details about each of the grants as well as some application tips. Overall, Complete Streets program, this is our fifth year, implementing the program. I'll talk more about this, but there is a $100,000 concept planning award as well as a $1 million construction award. The whole arching concept here is to leverage transportation funding to bring about what Chelsea was indicating before, these important transformative land use changes. Next slide, please. What are Complete Streets? Essentially, as you can see from this slide, there are streets that are safe for everyone, no matter how you travel, no matter what mode it is, who you are, that these streets are capable of moving people from place to place in a safe fashion. Thank you, Chelsea. Next slide. I'm sure most of you have seen this. 2014, FDOT did develop their Complete Streets policy. This policy, excellently written. A couple of really important points here is that, FDOT's really focusing on safe transportation, improved quality of life, as well as economic development in context with the Complete Streets program. And then a few bullets here. We don't have to go over all of these, but what I do want to point out is that, all projects, utilizing this guidance from FDOT could be utilized using the Complete Streets policies, where the right-of-way is planned, and operated for safe access for everyone. And also, something else I'd like to point out is that the Complete Streets policies, as well as the implementation, it's important to connect all of the corridors here, and that all communities have the ability to develop these systems that connect to each other to keep people fiscally and physically healthy. Next slide. Thank you. And just what is the grant program overview? Again, this is a competitive program. There is annual solicitation. And Forward Pinellas, we provide workshops like the one we're doing right now, as well as one-on-one meetings with the applicants. Next slide, please. And here's some more details about the actual grants themselves. So like I already indicated, you have up to $100,000 for concept planning projects and $1 million for construction projects. A couple of things to consider is that that fiscal year 2021 project that would be approved would be included in the FDOT work program for the years 2022 to 23 through 26 to 27, excuse me. A couple of notes about the concept planning that are really important to keep in mind. There are important dates. The concept planning requires a formalized agreement with Forward Pinellas by July 1st, 2020. And also something to keep in mind that should any of you on the line or any of the applicants be chosen, that you do have to utilize the Forward Pinellas consultants as part of the concept planning. Again, another really important reminder, just to reiterate again, we will be available to provide technical assistance. However, this technical assistance request must be received prior to October 1st, 2020. And the applications are due by October 23rd, 2020. Next slide, please. And here's some more details about the concept planning projects to keep in mind. First, I would suggest everybody go through the applications, and take a detailed look, but these are some important takeaways. Is that the minimum criteria here for a concept planning proposal is to include local support. You must demonstrate how the project serves as a redevelopment catalyst. Again, there's that land use connection. And you have to provide project information. As Chelsea indicated, it doesn't need to be overly comprehensive dissertation. However, we do have to understand the existing conditions, that baseline data, the location of the subject corridor. We do need to indicate, what is the match that's available from the community that is providing the application, as well as that overall plan and the timeline for the project implementation. Next slide, please. Here's some construction project suggestions. The minimum criteria here, you have to have local support. It has to have that catalyst, essential land use development portion, just as the concept planning requires. Again, construction projects, multiple modes, like we already indicated in the Complete Streets definition, has to serve all users. It does have to have that LAP, that local agency program approval. That's really important, or an agreement. And as everyone knows who's worked on any roadway project, the right-of-way does need to be available or secured, and that needs to be indicated in an application. Again, to reiterate, that land use connection is really important for that transformative change. Next slide, please. Here's some additional information about what you need to actually put in your application. Like the other concept planning grant, you need to indicate your existing conditions, the location of the corridor, if the local match is available. The important part here is indicate, if there's barriers for traditionally underserved communities that your project is going to be able to address. Also, if there's a local planning requirement, and provide your project schedule. So here, something I would suggest with the construction project, as well as the concept is, indicate, what is this piece in the larger system? How does it address environmental justice? How does it address the demographics? How does it address, connection to jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Again, nothing that's going to be a dissertation, but really providing that context for understanding the importance of this project. Next slide, please. Thank you. Application suggestions. First, again, being concise is always preferred over something that's overly wordy. If you hit the targets, if you go through the application and you ensure that you're going through it, checking all the boxes, that's more important than a really long document. A couple suggestions: if you're not ready this year to apply, certainly keep the Complete Streets grants in mind for your future projects. Try to design and develop those projects in context with the grant specifications. Definitely ask Ford Pinellas for help with your application. We'd be more than willing to serve you in any capacity when you're putting these applications together. Of course, don't miss important deadlines. Don't wait till the last minute to put together your application. And something that would probably be most helpful is on our website. Here's the URL. It does have the past applications that have been submitted, and you can indicate when you're looking at them which ones have been selected. So those would be really wonderful guidelines for folks that really aren't quite sure where to start with putting their application together. Next slide, please. And these are the Complete Street national standards. Not all of these are going to be in every project. This is a list of slides that are, example components of Complete Streets projects. I would, if I were you guys, look at these and consider them in context with your particular project, see how many, if not all, you might be able to check off. Knowing that when we review these applications, we do look at these holistically, and that we're looking at the project, through a large scale. And we may have projects that don't get every single one of these, and that's okay. Next slide, please. And here's a couple of examples. This is from last year. This is the Pinellas Park project that was awarded the Concept Planning Award. This application is online in that URL we just provided. It was a 1.8 mile stretch of road. We provided 100K and they had a 75K match. It's a really important area in Pinellas Park where the community can travel between their city center and a performing arts district. It was a safer alternative, for commuting for all modes of transportation than another road that runs parallel to this one. At the time, it had no bicycle accommodations, and it was within a minority and low-income EJ area. Next slide, please. And this is the construction award for 2020. It went to Dunedin for a portion of Skinner Boulevard. They had a 3.7 million match. We provided 1 million. There's a half-mile of roadway where the Complete Streets project will be designated. This does have a mixture of land uses, commercial as well as residential. There is a Pinellas Trail crossing. It's an area that really needed the multimodal accommodations with the population of folks that live in this area and the need for other modes for transportation. This has an extremely high usage of transportation by bikes as well as golf carts. And essentially, this project had a large community support. What they were really able to demonstrate in this application was that they have this context of the transformative land use, and providing availability for, the residents to utilize this area in a new way, for the commercial, the residential areas, to allow for transportation within the section of roadway that's going to be safer. Please do check that application out if you're going to be applying for the construction grant. Next slide, please. Program milestones. This is something that certainly I would suggest that everyone that's considering apply, put on every calendar that you own. Right now, we're going to be sending out that call for projects in July 2020. Again, technical assistance deadline is October 2nd, 2020. So anytime between then, please do ask us if you need help. The applications are due by 5 p.m., that's Eastern time, on October 23rd, 2020. Following that, there'll be a series of recommendations and processes. We will, here at Forward Pinellas, be taking the recommendations to our committees in February 2021. We'll then take it to the Forward Pinellas board on March 10th, 2021. After that, the concept planning agreement for that 100K will be executed, and it will be that amount of money will be available starting on July 1st. If you do intend to pursue this particular grant, keep in mind that all phases of that concept planning must be complete, and your invoices must be sent and executed by July 1st of 2022. In construction funding, just to keep in mind, the funding would be available in 2026. Next slide, please. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Angela. And now we have Robert Feigl, and he is going to talk through the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program.
Hi guys, this is Rob Feigl, and I'll do a similar overview for the Transportation Alternatives Program. It's historically been pretty much designated for bicycle, pedestrian projects, but could also be used for something such as infrastructure to improve access for transit. Next slide. And the program structure is pretty much similar to the previous year that we've made a few tweaks. So we still have the minimum award amount is $300,000 and the maximum amount is $2 million. If you have a project that's valued at more than $2 million to construct, probably need to look at having that go on to our multimodal list, because there's really a limited amount of money in the Transportation Alternatives Program. So each year, Forward Pinellas will be selecting a maximum of 3 projects, and it's a max of 2 submittals per jurisdiction. And in order to make sure that the projects don't become stale over time, the projects will be removed after 3 years. And some of the prerequisites, just highlights, is that we're still looking for local commitment, 100% of right-of-way or easement and LAP certification. For local commitment, one of the changes, we're not necessarily looking for local governments to contribute matching funds, but local commitment's still going to be required to be shown in the form of a resolution from the jurisdiction's board supporting the project, and as well as documentation of public participation. Next slide. So just highlighting of the scoring, if the project is providing direct access to a multimodal corridor, then it'll be 10 points for that. By the way, the detailed scoring sheet will also be included as part of the addendum packet that we'll go over shortly. So these are just some highlights on the scoring. Connection to an activity center as shown in the Pinellas Countywide Plan would have 10 points. If it's identified in the bicycle pedestrian master plan, 5 points. If it's filling a gap, so a gap in a sidewalk, for example, then that would be 10 points. Direct access to priority transit route. So if it only has 30-minute headways, that would be 10 points. If it only has 65 minutes to 45 to 60 minutes rather, headways, then 5 points. And then direct access to environmental justice areas, then it would be given 15 points. Next slide, please. And then for bicycle facilities, so there's a stress test that some of you may be familiar with, where basically the more easygoing it is, the more points. If it's sort of categorized as only the strong and fearless would go on it, then not as many points. That's something, as an aside, that the Ford Pinellas staff will be working on developing the scoring for. But the local jurisdictions can do the calculations for the sidewalk projects. For sidewalk projects with a separated corridor and a minimum 2-foot buffer, they would be awarded 15 points. If upon completion of the project, there's going to be sidewalks on both sides of the roadway, then 10 points. And if there's only going to be a sidewalk on one side of the roadway upon completion of the project, then it would only get 5 points. Next slide. So an overview of the transportation alternatives application, you're really going to have three parts you want to make sure you have when you're putting together your application for this. Just so you know, I have actually received calls on the name of this. So we regularly call this just the TA program and TA applications, but just for the record, the official name is the Florida Department of Transportation Service Transportation Block Grant Program of Transportation Alternatives Set Aside Program Project Application. So if you see that on there, that's what we're looking for. That's what you're going to see at the top of the FDOT application. So you're going to want to have that full application, the TA application checklist that Ford Pinellas put together just to help you make sure that you've got a full and complete application. And there's also an addendum with additional helpful information. Next slide. So with regard to the first TA application, this is the official form put together by FDOT. The most recent one available is available on their website. And if you go to the website that I have on this slide at fdot.gov/planning/systems, they call it TAP for Transportation Alternatives Program. Go to the next slide. At the bottom of that, you'll see, and go ahead, move forward one more slide. In the bottom left corner, it says Program Guidance for 2019. There's a little bit closer shot of that. Next slide. And if you click on that, you'll get the Transportation Alternatives Set Aside Program Guidance and Procedures for fiscal year 2020. And I believe it's Appendix C actually has the TA application that's fillable. You can go in and fill out all of that. So in addition to this application, next slide, you want to have the, you also want to have our checklist, because above and beyond what FDOT is requiring, we have a few extra requirements, and we just want to make sure that we have all that to ensure that we have a complete application. So the checklist we've already kind of summarized in the previous slides, but this just helps you kind of go through and make sure it's a complete application. Next slide. And then finally, one more slide ahead, please. The application addendum just has additional information. I would note that when you submit it, please take a note of the deadlines. Please submit it also not only to Chelsea Favreau, but also myself, Robert Feigl. And it's typically our first initial, full last name at forwardpinellas.org. And that's just to make sure it's going to more than one person in case someone's out of the office one day or something like that. So next slide. And one more slide. On the timeline, it's pretty much the same timeline that you're looking at for the other projects. But I've just highlighted a few that are more specific to the TA program. So September 4th is the deadline for technical support. So try to pull together any questions that you have by that time. And you can send that to me. You can contact me or call me. You're not going to be able, because I'm not in the office, to reach me there, but you can call me on my cell phone at 727-278-9028, or contact me at F as in Frank, EIGEL at forwardpinellas.org. September 25th is the TA program project application deadline. So please be sure that you get the TA applications to us by that deadline. And we'll be going to the subcommittees for review in November, and then the board after that. I think that's probably the last slide. So that's it for the TA portion.
All right, thanks, Rob. So I'm going to go ahead and walk us through the multimodal priorities now. So the way that we structured this program was really around these 6 goals that you see on the screen right now. These goals are consistent with the countywide land use plan and also Advantage Pinellas, the long-range plan for the agency. We developed a series of criteria underneath each of these goals. The criteria applies to all projects regardless of the mode unless it's otherwise noted. For example, when it comes to project readiness, I know we had a couple of different criteria that would apply to roadway projects versus transit projects, but that is spelled out in the program documentation. We do have a program structure document that's included in the attachments that went out in the call for projects and also on our blog post. And that includes detail on how the criteria is going to be applied to each of the projects that we receive. So we're trying to be consistent regardless of the mode, how we're going to be applying that criteria. That way there's some certainty moving forwards. Advancement of the projects is going to be at the sole discretion of the Forward Pinellas board. If we receive 50 applications, they are not going to be advanced to the board in 1 through 50 rank order. We are proposing to advance them in some buckets of the most highest scoring projects versus the next highest scoring and so on. Maybe about 4 or 5 buckets, I believe. And that way we can ensure some geographic equity as we award projects and also some modal equity. We do have set-asides that we identified in the Advantage Pinellas plan for transit capital projects, for technology projects, and we really want to use this process to help identify how we're going to be filling in the gaps for those projects to advance them. This is just a really high-level overview of the structure of the program. The minimum project cost is going to be $350,000. That is because it is a lot of work to get a project from start to finish and through this process. So we want to make sure that, you know, where it's not going to be a $20,000 project that's going to take us $100,000 to process. We are asking that each applicant submit no more than 3 applications per jurisdiction. All modes will be considered. However, we are going to stress this, there will be no standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects allowed through this program. And the reason that we're doing that is we developed the active transportation plan as we developed Advantage Pinellas. And through the active transportation plan, we already identified the top projects for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And we already identified the highest priorities for overpasses, for trails. And what we want to do is take those highest priorities and feed them into the list separately. And that way they're not going to be competing with other applications that might be coming in through this process. The amount of funding that we have for non-roadway capacity projects is it's limited. A lot of the funding that we receive is very tied to roadway capacity. However, we have committed that all of the funding that we receive that is flexible, we're going to get on non-roadway capacity modes. So we want to make sure that that money that's already going to non-roadway modes is going to be split up amongst, you know, those other modes, and it's not just all going to go to bike peds. Some will also go to transit, technology, operational improvements, things like that. Each of the applications is going to be reviewed against set criteria that supports each of the goals. I'm not going to walk through all of the criteria right now. There's a lot of different criteria. It is included in the application packet along with all of the scoring that will be applied to each. So you can see when you put your application together what the point structure would be based on the project you submit for. And then again, this last bullet point, the projects will be advanced in those ranges of high, medium, and low. And then the Ford Pinellas board will make a decision on which projects to advance from there. This is the proposed scoring and how it breaks down. About 25% of the points are going to be towards safety components of your projects, 22% towards equity and health, 18% towards mobility, and then you can see the other areas on there, as well as additional considerations for project readiness. And I apologize, I can't see that side of my screen because I have images up. It's project readiness and also collaboration and support from the community. But this is generally how the points break down. And again, in the packet, the more detailed information is right there. For the review process, what we're going to be doing is having a number of Ford Pinellas staff members. We're going to take each application and individually score them. Then we'll be coming together and we'll be comparing our notes and our scoring to come up with one single score for each project. And we want to make sure that we do this so that everyone is in agreement on how the scoring is applied and that there's just general consistency across all applications. Following this, what we'll be doing is having one-on-one meeting with each applicant. That way we can walk through your project with you and explain why the scoring was applied the way it was. We also have a similar approach for our Transportation Alternatives program. We found this very helpful in the past. We even found when we sat down with an applicant to show them what the scoring was, that we had made an error on our part. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're catching all of that with you. So we will be sitting down with each of you next spring to talk about how the scoring was applied to ensure that consistency. And then we'll have committee recommendations in February of next year and Ford Pinellas board action in March. These are more deadlines. Again, a technical assistance deadline of November 30th with applications due the second Friday in December. Any questions on the program, please forward them to myself. Then we'll have that internal review, one-on-one meetings, committee recommendations, and then the summer of next year is when we'll be looking to add those projects to the priority list to gain for the 22-23 to 26-27 FDOT work program. And we will note anything new on the priority list may not get funding in that work program. It may not get funding until the last year of the work program because of the uncertainty surrounding the economy or project overruns for other projects that are already in the work program. We can't guarantee when a project will be funded, but one should expect that as we work through the priorities, it would be looking at that new fifth year for funding. And generally, this is the timeline that we're looking at. I did highlight August 21st, 2020 as an intent to submit deadline. If you do plan to submit a project for any of these grant programs, we do ask that you let us know no later than August 21st. If you're on the fence, just let us know. If you're sure.
Chelsea?
And I'm muted again. I apologize. So the August 21st deadline, that way if we don't hear from you, we can reach out to you and let you know that, do you guys need crash data? Is there, some traffic data that maybe you don't have that maybe we could provide to you? It helps us know what's coming forward so that we can plan appropriately and make sure that we have enough internal review time. It also helps us be a good partner to any of you applicants so that we can make sure that you guys have all the data necessary and all the support that you need to move forward. So again, regardless of any grant program you intend to submit for, please let us know no later than August 21st. And this is all of our contact information on this slide. That kind of concludes our presentation. A lot more information is available on our website, on our blog. We emailed all of our technical coordinating committee members and also all of our other local governments through their city managers' offices with more detailed information. But I'd really like to open it up right now and take any questions from anyone on the phone or through the Zoom platform. If you could use your raised hand function and we can call on you in order and we'll answer any questions that you might have.
Bob Robertson?
Hey, thanks for the information and the presentation. Just a follow-up question on something that was mentioned early in the presentation. I heard you say that the design work would need to be done by, I guess it was approved consultants. Can you provide a little more detail on that? Or if you have a list of those that you could provide, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, that's for our Complete Streets program. And I will caution, it's not design, it's just concept planning. We did not procure consultants to do actual design work. But yes, to do the concept planning for Complete Streets, our GPCs, general planning consultants, must be used. We are currently in the process of negotiating new agreements with them, and we'll have that in September. At least that's the goal. So we will have a list of about 20 consultants by September that you all would be able to use and pick from. And we'll let you pick whoever you want from the list. That's purely at the discretion of the local government, as long as they're on that list.
And we would contract directly with one of those firms? Is that
Yes.
how it works? Okay.
Yes, you can piggyback off of our procurement process to go right through them, and then you just give us your invoices and we'll just reimburse you for the work done.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I show no other questions.
All right, well, if there are no other questions, a recording of this will be posted to the website as well. Again, if you have any other questions over the next weeks or months, please feel free to reach out to either myself, Angela, or Rob, and we're more than happy to help you out in any way that we can, and we look forward to seeing your applications. All right, thank you all.